My father would go out to play games again one day. His friends were waiting for him outside to play. My father put on his clothes and went out. He saw his friends waiting outside the door to get on their bikes. However, he did not have a bicycle. His friends said that their father just bought the bikes and he shouldn't be upset. He could also ride his friends' bikes. Nevertheless, my father returned home, thanking his friends and saying that he did not want to go out today. He came to my grandfather at home and started to cry. My grandfather said to him, "You were out to play, my son. What happened? You started crying. Did you fight with your friends?" My father said sadly and crying that he didn't have a bike and that's why he was upset. My grandfather said, "Don't worry, son. I have an old bike. It's time to give it you." They started walking towards the garage together. My father was suddenly very happy. He saw the bike in the garage. It was a yellow bike. It was a bit old and needed to be cleaned and painted. But my father didn't want to get involved in any way because this bike was a memento of my grandfather's father. They got the bike and went out to find out. He learned to drive in a short time and started touring with his friends. One day, while walking, he suddenly saw a button on the bike. He had no idea what it was. He pressed the button and in an instant he was teleported to a completely different place. He immediately started walking to understand what was going on. That was a situation that I couldn't understand. He saw Hajj flowers. After a while, he began to see ants his own size. This was a very serious ordeal because my father had shrunk in size. He had no idea how to escape and get back to his old self. After a while, he noticed something. It wasn't actually teleported anywhere else. He had just shrunk in size and was in front of his own house. He began to look for a way to escape, passed under the entrance door of the house and began to walk towards the room where my grandfather was sitting. However, besides shrinking in size, his voice was no longer heard by people. That's why your grandfather wouldn't be able to make his voice heard. He went right to my grandfather's. He called out to him, but the sea was not heard. My grandfather had to see himself. He got to his feet and started to get on top of his shoes, but he couldn't because even that was too high. He immediately went to the kitchen and started looking for something useful. My grandfather needed something sticky to clean off his feet. But the useful thing was on the counter. He gave up on this idea because he couldn't reach it. He had to find another way. He had to do something catapult-like. He thought of the trap they had set up for the mice in the house. If he got to the top of the trap would close and he could throw himself in the meantime. He immediately went to the mouse trap and pushed it near my grandfather. He climbed to the top of the trap and tried to move the cheese that was put in the trap with the help of a stick to activate it. The trap started to close, and at that moment he threw my father. My father jumped on the table next to my grandfather and suddenly found himself slammed into the wall. His face was slammed against the wall and he was in a lot of pain. He immediately straightened up and began to call out to my grandfather. My grandfather thought my father was a fly. Just as he was about to hit his hand on him, he realized that he looked like a different creature. He took my father in his hand and took him in his palm. He knew how to get my dad back to his old self. He took my father back to the bike. He put my father in the basket of the bike and pressed the button my father had pressed again. My father suddenly grew up and went back to his old self. My father was wondering why my grandfather would do such a thing and asked him. As for my grandfather, I forgot about it. These are all events that I experienced, he said. You are alive and your children will live in the future. You should be careful, son. See you guys in the next episode. Take care of yourself. Bye.